Synergy Practices podcast powered by our Minko Inc. Guys, I'm excited for today because we have a lot going on, specifically a new red card episode. Today we're going to be talking about demising walls and everything that has to do with a demising wall. Some things are expected, some unexpected. Sasha, let's get into that. Tell me a little bit about this doctor and his situation.
Okay, it's going to be a bit of an earful for you guys, and I'm going to take you guys through it, but bear with me because the details are important on this one. So Art, it's a 3,000 square foot general dentistry office doctor who called in about a peculiar situation he finds himself into. So here's what he did. So he was looking at a condo, purchased a condo in a condo building, 3,000 square foot, located in Virginia Beach. When he purchased the condo, he worked very closely with the seller, the condo association, and the condo association's realtor to finalize the location of the demising walls of the space, because the condo he was purchasing was part of another existing condo. So that condo owner was splitting their condo to reduce the size of their space and giving 3,000 square foot of that condo to this doctor. In doing so, the building's architect and the building's realtor worked a way to create a wall so that anytime you're splitting space, you notice, Art, you've got to have a working space. You can't leave someone in an awkward space or an awkward shape. So the building's architect and the building's seller worked to create a demising wall location that would ideally minimize construction on the additional space that's being left over and only require minimal construction to bring it up to demising wall standards. Fast forward to now, where the doctor's in architectural drawing phase, getting ready to start construction, and the building is saying, oh, that wall isn't a demising wall. It's a standard wall. You must take that wall down and create a demising wall, and it's causing a lot of costs for the doctor. Demising walls are not standard drywall. We'll talk about it a little bit, I hope you can. But the cost is jumping up a lot for the doctor, and he's reaching out to see what can be done.
So one thing to clarify, you said the building's architect is worked to create the demising wall. Are you saying the wall is there?
So the wall is there. The drywall, the studs, and everything are there.
They're trying to use an existing wall as part of the demising wall. That's what you're saying. So
Correct.
They kind of carved out a space for the new buyer to take,
With the hopes
utilizing the existing wall as a demising wall. Okay.
Their hopes are that minimizing costs on both ends, as we now know.
Right.
But they have a huge cost of building, and just so you know, because you don't even know the size of the wall.
Correct.
The linear footage of this wall, I mean, it's huge, Art. I mean, we're talking 3,000 square foot. It's about 28 feet in length of 10 of the deck.
Right.
Sorry, some additional information for you, just so you know. The deck is about 13 feet.
Right.
So,
So first thing, let's define what a demising wall is.
Yeah, please.
The demising wall is naturally a wall that divides two separate tenants, or divides a tenant or a condo owner from the common area hallways. So it's a separation wall. The demising wall by code has to be fire rated. Basically, it's another way of saying these are two different spaces. So it needs to be fire rated, which means if you're trying to utilize an existing wall that's interior of the space, chances are that wall was never built as fire rated. And what are the rules of fire rating? Obviously, the wall has to go from ground all the way up to the deck. You can't stop at the ceiling height, right? So if you have a ceiling, let's say your ceiling tiles are at 10 feet or 8 feet, and in this case, the deck is 13 feet, the studs have to go from ground all the way up to the deck, right? Which means they have to go 13 feet, hit the deck, and then there's got to be fire rated 5/8 inch drywall on each side, and then you gotta most of the time, the demising walls, if it's from tenant to tenant, they want it insulated to kind of keep the noise from one tenant to the other tenant, right? So those things need to happen. I'm assuming if your wall, the existing wall that's already there, is probably not insulated. Most likely that could have been a 1/2 inch drywall. So not only you have to extend it, you have to now probably take out the drywall, put new drywall in it, or add more drywall to it, which means you have to paint it on both sides. You have to put insulation in it. So therefore the costs are going. What the challenge part is, your client that that called in, the doctor probably didn't take into this cost into consideration. That's what he's probably frustrated.
So a recap, what is the red card? Just overlooking some of these things?
Oh, well, the red card. Yeah, I mean, the red card in this case is, again, we keep talking about doing the due diligence, doing the understanding, right? The red card here is you're dealing with, probably, if you're the doctor, you're dealing with realtors and, building management that don't really understand what a demising wall is versus what a normal, regular interior wall is. They were under the impression that they can convert this wall into a demising wall, which they're right, they can. The only problem is they didn't associate the cost to be as high as they thought. They thought they can just extend it. The wall is already at 10 feet, that's what the ceiling is. We'll extend it 3 more feet, and that's it, right? Versus now, you're like, well, it's more than just extending it 3 feet, right? We gotta take both drywalls out, we gotta put insulation in, we gotta redo the drywall, we gotta add the drywall, we gotta make sure it's completely sealed, and it's going all the way up to the deck. So, I'm assuming, what did you say? What was the linear footage? I'm assuming
28 linear.
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably adding a good $7,000-8,000 of cost if
Plus
I have to
yeah.
convert that wall into. And then don't forget, if I'm taking out drywall, reputting drywall, refinishing it, I got to paint it too, right?
Absolutely.
So that's just naturally, adding cost.
So let me ask you this, Art, because this is a kind of a unique red card segment, because the doctor, in his mind, did everything he thought he could have done. An architect recommended the wall. A building management company approved the wall. The seller, it's a seller, they don't really know what they're talking about, approved it as well. Even a real estate agent was involved. I know you guys are saying the red card is not doing the due diligence, but aside from getting literally us in there or a local contractor in Virginia Beach, what else could the doctor have done? I know it's a tough question even for you, but I'm just trying to help our listeners.
No, it's unfortunate. It was overseen. It was unforeseen condition. It's something someone overlooked. Obviously, the architect could have overlooked it, or in the architect's mind, he probably knew about it. He was just not assessing the cost for the client, right? There's a big difference between me coming to you and saying, Darwin, you're an expert. Tell me, can this happen? You say yes, versus saying, tell me what is intelligent happening and how much would it cost, right? Now you're like, okay, yeah, it could happen. I have to take it out and redo it, doc. It's going to cost you $70,000. Versus, yes, it can be done. Because the architect wasn't lying, it can be done. The studs are there, right? It was much better than installing a brand new wall where you have to now put the studs in, right? So in the architect's mind, it could be done. It's just, we keep talking about what sets you free. Asking questions and asking good questions will make eventually you get all the answers.
Yeah.
And I think asking the question is the key here. If the doctor had asked the proper questions to the architect, saying not only it can be done, but how much would it cost me?
And unfortunately, you have a situation like we're talking about. The doctor did what they could, but unfortunately, you have to have the right team in place because, being able to answer questions is one thing. But being able to direct a doctor, whether it's good news or bad news, and giving them all of the information necessary so they can make the right decision, that's what the key part here. And it doesn't seem like that was necessarily done. And it wasn't the doctor's fault. It's just also the team that you work with, and you find sometimes the limitations throughout the process in working with different individuals.
Sure.
Yeah, and one final takeaway just for our listeners is Art mentioned demising walls and why they're additional costs, but if you're coming across any walls and you hear the words of the demising walls, a study needs to be done and some considerations need to be put in place. A regular wall inside of a space that's not demising, costs a few $100 a demo. That's nothing. A demising wall is a whole different game. So your takeaway is basically, you hear demising wall, you're splitting a space, you're building a new demising wall. Pay attention because costs can get very, very.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to add on that, it's about people think any wall
is the same.
Is a dividing wall.
Yes.
It's a dividing.
Yes.
That's what it's like. This wall right now, right? They're assuming the wall that's here right now could be a dividing wall since it's separating us from the next room, right? So if you're within a space, it's a dividing wall, but not necessarily a demising wall by code.
Correct.
Right? Because if you're within your condo and you build offices, those officers don't have to be fire rated. They don't have to be demised, right?
Exactly.
Because you're within the same condo, right? So the walls you're building are different. Now, if you say, I'm gonna demise this office and give it to another person to buy the office, so the office itself becomes a separate condo, now those walls have to be fire rated and it needs to go all the way up by code. It makes it a little bit more challenging. And another thing is, anytime we're dealing with a demising wall, anything that penetrates through that wall has to be fire rated. For example, if you have an air conditioning duct going from one side to the other side,
supply, yeah.
right? That duct has to have a fire damper. So in case of a fire, the damper closes and the air conditioning does not move from air from one side to the other. So everything, any pipes penetrating that wall needs to have a fire damper or has to be.
Basically, Art saying safety is expensive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the margin wall can add on. If you're turning the margin wall into an existing space, if you're building a space, is it shell condition?
Yeah.
Potentially, because now you can avoid crossing. But if you've got electrical connections and things like that all already in there and you're taking the wall up, everything has to be fine.
Talk about a domino effect.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens. That's what happens. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, we want to thank everyone for supporting the Red Card segment podcast. Every week we try to have something new for you folks, and we are really getting tons of feedback. So we want to stop and thank everyone for their support. Thank you for downloading our episodes, for hitting that play on Spotify, on Google, on Apple. We see it happening. We want to thank you. So with that, if you haven't checked out our previous episodes, please do so by searching for Synergy Practices Podcast, available on Spotify, Apple, and Android podcast markets, as well as armincoinc.com.